Don't let debt define you. Do not let debt define you. I mean that. Are we clear? Spitting on the camera and shit. What I mean when I say that is, if you follow me, y'all know how aggressive I was with paying off my debt. Like, I went hard. I went extremely hard for 4 years straight. From start to finish, I went as hard as I can go until I became debt free. Now, debt didn't necessarily define me, but it did consume a lot of my life. That's all I thought about. Pay off this debt, pay off this debt, get out of debt. That's all I thought about. I had other goals and other visions, yes, but my main focus, my main objective was to become debt free. And I did that. I executed that. I accomplished that goal, and it is what it is. But once I became debt free, and as you go through this process, you'll learn more and more. I'm always learning. And I realized, like, man, did I go too hard, or did I was reflecting back, but ultimately I have no regrets on my situation. But I see people all the time that just takes their debt to the heart, like to the core, and just it mess with their emotions on a negative side. Your emotions are always gonna be under attack when you're doing something like this. It's a big, scary, hairy goal. Depending on the amount of debt you have, to just finally get on the other side of it, you're gonna go on an emotional roller coaster, like I did myself. You're gonna be frustrated sometimes. You're gonna be happy sometimes. You're gonna be mad sometimes. Sometimes you're gonna be confused and uncertain. You're gonna feel all of these things. You're gonna feel all of it. Some of you may feel sadness. Some of you may feel sad because you don't believe that you'll ever pay off your debt. But I'm here to tell you, try your best not to. I know that's easier said than done, but try your best not to, because debt is something we all have. But the fact that you're mindful and on your journey currently shows that you're doing what it takes. You're doing what it takes to get on the other side of that, and you'll be good no matter how long it takes. One of these days, you do know, especially if you're watching this video, because you're not here for no reason. I tend to attract a lot of ambitious folk, a lot of folks who are in search of inspiration and hope, right, in terms of bettering their financial situation. And I love it. I love it because that's one of my favorite things to do, is share my story and hold the hands of those who was once where I was. And it's amazing because y'all share a bunch of stories with me, all of your successes, some of the trials and tribulations you're facing, and I'm able to pinpoint exactly where you are and help push you forward. One thing about debt, and this is something that I wish I knew sooner, it's not fatal, and it definitely don't define you unless you choose for it to be that way. Debt is not fatal. Like, it's not that big a deal. It's not. When you really peel the layers back and look at it for what it is, debt is just owing somebody some money, and it's things in life that goes on that is much, much deeper than that. It's not fatal, it's not final, and it is definitely not a definition of who you are unless you owe the wrong people some money. I couldn't help this. Unless you owe Bruno and them some money and they coming after you, you know what I'm saying? Then that's a different story. But besides that, it's not fatal, it's not final, and it definitely doesn't define you. Another thing I'll say about debt that I wish I would have learned sooner, and I didn't exercise this mindset until I became debt free. When I made my spreadsheet for the first time, I'm not a fan of spreadsheets, but I made a spreadsheet and I started tracking it once I got to the end, and I saw something. I sit there and held my chin and I say, instead of looking at your debt going down, right? You're paying back the money you owe. So the amount you owe, that debt is going down. But the more debt you pay down, the higher your net worth increases. That blew my mind. I was just like, it felt like I struck gold, and I'm like, dude, that's a simple concept, but at the same time, a lot of people don't think that way. It was a mindset shift for me. It was a paradigm shift. It was a different way of thinking. I'm like, wow. So if you're paying attention to the positive side versus the negative side, which is what I always preach in this, a way of life for me, I'm probably the most optimistic person in the world. So I'm always thinking positively. Instead of you looking at your how much debt you have or how long it's taking you, your debt is going down, which is a positive, so you're getting rid of it. But an even better positive is looking at your net worth grow up. Like, every payment you make towards your debt increases your net worth, and that's dope. That's really, really dope to me, and I always look at it like that. You're gaining a higher net worth, which is amazing, so keep that in mind. I was reading an article on Business Insider that said the average American debt per person is roughly $53,000. Now that sounds steep, and it is steep depending on the type of debt that it is, but that debt is typically credit cards, personal loans, auto loans, student loans. Oh my God, so many, so many loans, mortgages, right? Home equity lines of credit, so forth and so on. Those are your most common loans, and that's the average, which totals out to roughly $53,000 per American. And that's just, you know, that's something to look at. So you can gauge it by if you fall in that category or not, and you can also gauge and use this information as what I'm in debt for. Was it a necessity, or was it something that I just made a mistake on? Is it something that I can clean up and try not to fall back into, which is what I've been trying to do. Is I got out of that rut and I told myself never again, never again. And with the information I'm equipped with now, with the knowledge I'm equipped with now, I'm gonna try every single day of my life to never let my expenses exceed my income, right? Because that's how simple it is. That's exactly how simple it is. Owing more than you like, having more going out than you have coming in, it could turn very disastrous, and that's what we don't want. So managing your debt is very, very important, regardless if you're able to expedite the payoff. That's another thing I want to add. Everybody's not designed to be gazelle intense, right? I was gazelle intense. That was just me. Everybody's situation is different. I was single with no kids at the time. I had just finished paying off my debt as I was having my first child, and I was like, man, talk about perfect timing. Analyze your situation for what it is. Whatever your circumstances are, if you're single, if you're in a relationship, if you had kids, etc., etc., set your goals up, design your plan around that. So you have to consider all these aspects, and it's extremely important. Like, I can't stress that enough. That's why I always say debt doesn't define you, because with everything you have going on in life, you want to make sure that you don't necessarily deprive yourself. That's one thing I'll add, because a lot of people do go that route, and I don't think it's the best route to take. Some people used to think I deprived myself. I never did that. I still lived my life throughout my debt-free journey. Like, I went on multiple vacations. I went to multiple weddings. I cashed out on a bunch of different things. So it still took me 4 years, but had I been like super, like overly over the top gazelle intense where I did deprive myself, I probably could have done that in a year and a half, maybe 2 years. But I was giving myself grace. Yes, I was aggressive, but when I knew I needed to take a break, I took a break unapologetically, and I got back to it. So keep that in mind as well. Don't overdo it. Know your limits, and just analyze your situation as a whole as you continue through this debt-free journey. That'll really help you, trust me. Given the current landscape of the overall US economy right now, we're getting a lot of grace from the government, right? Mr. Biden is putting pauses and holds on a lot of things, so make sure you take advantage of that. Kara still has student loans, right? My wife still has student loans, but hers is on pause. Hers is on pause, and she's taking full advantage of that. She don't feel any type of way about it. The fact that they're on pause, she has the opportunity to either A, continue to make payments without having to pay interest on them, or B, use the money she would have spent on her student loans to do other things, which either option is fine. So don't be afraid to pause the work, right? Don't be afraid to pause the mission. Just take it all in. It is what it is. But also don't be afraid to take advantage of it in terms of paying that debt off, because there's a lot of opportunities. So you want to make sure that this don't pass you by, because this won't be like this forever. This situation we're living in now is getting better and better over time. There's still some time where we're getting grace, but once that grace evaporates, you don't want to be looking back having those regrets like, okay, I wish I would have either put more on debt, or I wish I would have, you know what I'm saying, X, Y, and Z. So pay attention to the landscape as well. Pay attention to the overall economy, and look for other opportunities in terms of just elevation as a whole. But just a reminder again, don't take this debt too serious. Stay focused, stay locked in on it, but don't get so wrapped up in it to the point where you can't sleep at night. You know, it's not worth the mental strain. I'm here to tell you that it's not worth the mental strain. That's how I started in year 1 and year 2. I was feeling a little bit of pressure that I put on myself. I don't have nobody to blame for that pressure but myself. After I realized the error in my ways, I'm like, you know what? Chill. Just chill. Take it easy. You'll pay this debt off eventually. I don't know when. You might not know when, but just know if you keep taking the next best step, right? Small, accumulative, consistent steps, that debt will be out your life before you even know it. And then you'll be similar to me. Like I said, I'm already 2 years removed, and it sounds so crazy because I remember it like it was yesterday, trudging through with those 4 years. And the fact that they already 2 years behind me, it trips me out. It trips me out because time doesn't stop. Time will continue to move, but you have to continue to move with it. And that's all I have, man. Thank y'all for showing up, and I appreciate the support as always. Like this video if you like it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Also follow me on IG, Q Makes It Happen, on Instagram. Join the Q crew. Click the join link. Join my accountability group where you'll get exclusive content, more one-on-one with your boy, and it's also a way you can support the channel. From there, we're just gonna keep it moving. I go by the name of Q, and like I always say, if Q can make it happen, you can make it happen. I'll holler at y'all next video. Peace.